if you don't have a regular RPG group but are interested in RPGs, there's a couple of problems that you can run into. One is obviously finding experienced players and or an experienced GM, and of course the other is in finding anyone. So that leads sometimes to situations where, for those of us interested in playing RPGs, we're either doing solo RPGing, or we are trying to interest gamers, perhaps, or not gamers, in an RPG experience when they don't really have any exposure to it or maybe even any native interest in it. I heard about this game, Deck Quest. It's really it's called an open-ended role-playing card game, and by Garage Sofa Games. This is a review copy that I received from the publisher. I heard about this online and I investigated it because it seems to offer the potential to address the two issues that I just described. If you are somebody who's doing some solo RPGing, and I've done a bunch of videos about that, but it seems like this product might offer something for the solo GM, and also to introduce non-role-playing people into an RPG experience. So this video here on this game, and I'll just show you the contents here. It's really just a series of cards, and I haven't even opened it up yet, including there's no actual rules that aren't on cards. So I believe that this little stack of cards are the rules, and then I'm going to open this up, and obviously we'll take a look at this. It's not really much of an unboxing, it's just cards, but we got the cards, and at least from what I'm seeing here, very little art, and this D20, which is going to give me a hard time coming out. Back of the box tells you that Deck Quest is an easy-to-learn, open-ended role-playing card game. The rules are flexible. Adventures unfold on the spot, and the possibilities are endless. Rules are flexible is another way of saying there aren't very many rules, as we'll see. And it tells you what the contents of the cards are. That's really all that's in this box is cards and one D20. So when I heard about this, I became really interested in it, and I got a copy from the publisher, and I'm just showing you the contents. This is how it comes. I just sleeved these info cards. Really comprise the rules, and I just sleeved those. I'd say the cards themselves really do not need to be sleeved. They are very really, to me, seem really good quality, and like they would not be things I would need to sleeve. They would shuffle easily and not really be damaged. It comes with one D20 and cards. It is designed as a traditional role-playing game in the sense of having a GM, and there is literally one card here that will explain how to game master, and participants who are playing in the game. The reason that I was interested in it was it seemed to me to have a lot of possibilities for the solo player, the solo RPG player, that is to say, in terms of offering supporting material. And it's with that intention that I'm going to sort of talk you through some of the ways that I've been experimenting with it, and the ways in which I think it could be a really great resource for you doing solo RPGs. So there are other videos out there that will discuss or even demonstrate how it can become, how it's used sort of mostly as intention to make up an RPG experience for pretty quickly, actually. But that's not what I'm going to be talking about here. So let's take a look at some of the cards themselves and how it could be used to support you in a solo RPG experience. Let's look first at the role cards, because there are, what I've done here is I've matched up, you can just see visually, there are certain roles. So for example, fairy, and these are the race roles, kind of, and the choices for these are, this belongs in human, orc, nymph, goblin, halfling, dwarven, elven, demon, fairy, and yeah, that's it. And you can tell what these are because it will tell you what, it'll say racial attribute underneath. So these are the various races that you could possibly choose from. And then what I've done, it has the same backs, but there are also the indication of these other roles. These are specific attributes within the role that you could have, and then each of these has a skill card to go with it. So for example, if you are a tinker, and it will tell you that you can build machines and contraptions, given enough materials you can throw together just about anything, it will give you an action, and then you'll have some health points and some role points required to equip. Now this is following the rule set that they have, and they indicate somewhere in these cards how many role points you are given. You also get a skill that goes with that. Well, this is obviously not the right skill. Here it is, Tinker. A little messed up here. So you will find to match up to this particular role a skill. It will have the same name, and then it's going to give you, this is again a very basic system, what will happen on your D20 roll in terms of the outcome of what you're trying to do here. Let's look at some other ones here. I guess maybe I put the skills first. So here's the pugilist, for example, and it will tell you the general sense, obviously, that you're a fighter here, and then it will tell you what type of damage is done on your roll, and so on. So I have these sorted this way. You could use them, for example, as a solo player. Here's a mage. You could use them to be your NPCs if you are going through and encountering somebody and you knew who you wanted to encounter. You could pull in, based on your story, for example, you could pull in the appropriate character. There's gamblers, druids, clerics, berserkers, etc., assassins, alchemists, etc. And of course, they would all potentially also have these attributes of the race if you wanted to assign it that way. You don't have to do it, obviously, but this is some possibility of what is available. So it's giving you the basic structure of something. Let's say you're running a story and you're in a monastery or whatever. You just want to pull in a monk, and you can use this as a guide to whatever happens using the basic rules from this set or adapting it to your own set. So these are some of the characters that there are. They also have skills or attributes that are just more generalized, that aren't need to be associated with a class, and so it will give you, for example, you could be a charming person, a charming mage, and it will give you some attribute for that and what it actually means. There's charming, there's odd, lucky, greedy, etc. So there are a whole bunch awful minus 15 from all of your rolls. I will say that the numbers here, I mean, you can see this has a health of 100. The numbers here are all also pretty high, all pretty high. So if you're not actually going with this system, you're going to have to modify it. But the suggestion of these attributes, so vampiric, you know, taking health from somebody and raising your own health. Again, you could do this however you wanted to. So you could create, if you pulled in, say, a random character that you encountered, this tinker, you could just then randomly also pull in an attribute and then figure out for yourself what that meant in your story. So it is a way, it's a suggestive kind of resource, obviously, but pretty broad because there are so many different cards and categories. So here's a stoic attribute, you know, you may have to adapt here, so you're increasing your damage somehow, but then it says every word you say or write on your turn reduces this number by 5. Well, obviously, in this case, if you're playing by yourself, that is going to have to be modified, or maybe you wouldn't be able to use that card in particular. Now, let me say again, this is not designed for a solo play. This is designed for a group of players, but I think it's just a great resource that can be used, and you can modify as needed. There are many adversary cards as well. I think it was 75 was the number, I can't remember. And these are, here's an undead thief. It will tell you based on the roll what happens in terms of an attack. Gives you a health. So you can choose to use this very basic D20 system, rolling against it and using this as an attack, or simply using the descriptive text, the name of the character, as suggestive of whatever your story would be. Here's a super bat, for example. A blind thief. Black dragon. A fiery mummy. Again, there are the indication of what their actions are. There is some descriptive text here. Blue slime, etc. So these are a nice thick stack of adversary cards that you could potentially either seed the deck at the beginning to make it thematic if you wanted to, a really big spider. Or you could simply draw the card randomly and deal with it as you were moving through whatever space you're in. In terms of spaces, there are spaces here too. The location cards, again, I think there's about 75, I think it said. Lots of different locations. Now, the locations will have the description of the location here at the top. And then it will have suggestions of areas that this is attached to. So, for example, this flowering field is a vast outdoor location, and it will have a description here, and then it will give you some areas that could go off of here if you're mapping something out, including a forest, another field, an alchemist shack. There are not, however, this is not a self-contained system, so you can't look through these cards to get to a description of the honeyed cave, for example, or the giant beehive. It just gives you the initial location and then descriptions of where to go. So that's a little bit, that may or may not take you to a place that makes sense. So for example, if you were pulling in, if you were starting with this card, the empty field, and then you decided, all right, I'm going to go to, a place of emptiness or an ambush area, then you could pull in something else, and it may or may not make sense. So the location cards, while I thought that they might be as useful as the rest of the cards, I think actually found them to be not quite as useful, because if you're in the immense forest and then you go to a cave, you're in a cave, but you can't really easily use another card to get somewhere else. What you can do, and what I've experimented with, is just looking through the cards and say pulling in 5 locations that kind of make sense together, and then just drawing them randomly and going through those 5 locations. So forgetting about this information, but just going to one place after another that I have previously chosen. So those are the location cards. And then the final group of cards, extremely useful, are item cards. Obviously, these can be used in tons of different ways for whatever you're doing. You could simply draw them up randomly and decide that you picked up a longbow and, modify this to fit the system you're using, or if you're going with this system, you can use it as per its own instructions, which include how durable it is, like how many times you can use it, and in this case, what attack bonus it gives you. So there's a longbow, leather armor, an iron dagger, an infinity bag lets you carry lots of stuff. There's a potion of transformation. This is a standard trope fantasy system, and it is meant to be filled with, I don't want to say generic, but the kind of standard tropes of fantasy, and certainly the items follow that. An elixir of healing, elemental robes, they follow this very well. There's even a leveling up system built in, which is sort of clever. I haven't figured out exactly how I might use it, but in terms of these items that are degrees, a villain's degree, a warrior's degree, an adventurer's degree, and what they do is they will give you benefits, so you can, if you attain this, it's another way of kind of leveling up. You're trained in the finest arts of combat and warfare. You can search for certain cards and maybe add them to your roll or replace them. So it's a way of indicating some type of advancement of a level. And so these are provided here with the set. As I said, overall, I think this is extremely adaptable, for the solo RPG player who is looking for a little bit of something else, maybe a little bit of guidance or a way of pulling in NPCs. I think for me is always a struggle. An easy, quick way to find out who you're facing with some basic structure of their basic skills and what the implications of those skills might be. in a card-based mechanism. It's easy to set out and get to the table. What took me the longest was really matching up these skills with the particular roll card. I mean, it didn't really take that long, but that was what I needed to do to make it work. So overall, I really recommend this Deck Quest Set One Fantasy if you're a solo RPGer and you're looking for a little bit of something in a card-based mechanism to be either an overall framework or to come in and give you some specifics like items or NPCs to add to your adventure. Thanks for watching.